Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm here to bring you my TBR for April 2019 National Poetry Month. So just like Black History Month in February and Women's History Month in March, this month I have a priority, which is poetry because it is National Poetry Month. If you haven't heard about the priorities that I'm doing for each month this year, I will link below a video where I talk about the monthly priorities that I'm going to set for myself. And the goal of these priorities is just to get me to focus on certain books that I have in my TBR anyway, and to be a little bit more conscious when I'm making decisions about which books to check out next from the library, which books to prioritize in my reading. Poetry is something that I think I really enjoy, but I don't necessarily read too much of. So this month is going to be a lot of fun for me. I have come up with a list of 10 books that I would like to prioritize, not because I don't have more. I actually have a ton more that I would like to read, but it is a little unreasonable for me to make a TBR of more than 10 books given that I love to have room in my schedule for a lot of mood reading. And these 10 books are not necessarily things that I will read, it's just things that I would like to prioritize. So I would hope to read at least some of these in April. The highest priority poetry collection that I have for this month is Buchstabengefühle by Stephanie Laya Alcongo. And this is a book that Ian from Nur Chaos, who I will link below, did an amazing review of. He talked about this poetry collection in such a beautiful way, shared some of the poems and shared some of his thoughts on it. It was just so amazing and moving, and I just had to go out and get this collection, which was not easy because it is a German author. I believe that Alcongo is from Namibia and is a refugee who moved to Germany when she was a child, or maybe was even born in Germany. And she has such a great focus on issues of immigration and race and all sorts of identity intersectionality. So I'm really excited to attempt, and attempt is the right word, to read this collection because it is mainly in German. I believe there are a few poems in English, but mainly it is in German. Usually when I read in another language, I won't use a dictionary. I just read what I can understand and call it good enough. But this time I think I'm actually going to try to use a dictionary because I really want to understand these poems. Ian has also extremely graciously offered to help me understand if there's any poems I come across that I can't make sense of. So I'm very excited about this book, but also very challenged by it. So we'll see how it goes. Another top priority for this month is a collection called Don't Call Us Dead by Dennis Smith. And this is a poetry collection that Sush, my husband, got me as a present. I believe that we heard some people on Booktube talking about this, maybe during one of Dee Dee's Black chats. We can't remember. I asked Sush and he can't remember either, but we heard about it on Booktube. And it just seemed like a really interesting collection. I believe it's about being a Black male in the US. I'm not entirely positive, I don't remember clearly, but Sush said that since I was focusing on Black authors and he knew I wanted to read more poetry, he got it for me, and I'm very excited to read this book this month. Another couple of poetry collections that I decided to pick up based on what I've seen on Booktube are two poetry collections put out by Fernwood Press. So if anybody is interested in poetry, I really recommend that you check out Fernwood Press's Booktube channel, which I will link below. Elliot is an intern, I believe, at Fernwood Press and has been putting out some really great videos exploring some of the collections that Fernwood Press, which was a very small non-profit imprint that focuses, I believe, on Quaker values, something like that. They put out a lot of really interesting small poetry collections, and Elliot's been making absolutely wonderful videos doing poetry readings, interviews with the authors, reaction videos of other people reading some of this poetry, just a lot of cool stuff. So I've been following the Fernwood Press channel, and I really recommend you check it out if you like poetry. And I was very impressed in particular by two different collections that Elliot has presented. So the first collection is called As Clean as a Bone by Emmett Wheatfall. And this, I believe, also focuses on being a Black male in the US and has really, really moving poems. Elliot has done some readings from it, has had an interview with Emmett Wheatfall, has had another person react and share their own experiences of growing up as a Black male in the US and what that feels like. And it just seems like such a book to connect to. I think especially I'm very much trying to find poetry that represents different voices that also somehow speaks to me. So that kind of building connections, building bridges. And this one I'm really excited about. The other collection that I picked up from Fernwood Press is called Love is Deeper Than Distance by Pegadera. And this, Elliot just did a reading of recently that super spoke to me. It was absolutely beautiful about appreciating and recognizing the wonder and beauty of life around you. And that's definitely something, if you can tell by all the trees behind me, I really like to focus on how beautiful nature is and how wonderful just the day-to-day experience of life can be. So I thought this would be a really nice poetry collection to pick up. Also, reading just a little bit about the collection, it seems that Pegadera lost her husband to ALS and dementia. I've also been trying to read more about people who experience disabilities or who have a loved one who experiences disabilities. I've realized that I just don't read very much about it. I've also recently subscribed to Actual Spinster, who I'll link below as well, who talks about disability, who talks about the experience of what it feels like to go through disability, to have care, and what sort of books represent that. That's really made me very aware that I need to reach out more in my reading and make sure that I am able to hear those voices too. Next on my priority list is Finding My Elegy by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is another poetry collection that I've heard good things about on Booktube. Rachel at Kalanadi, who I will link below, recently read this and raved about it. She absolutely loved it. And I don't know how I have yet to read something by Ursula K. Le Guin, but I have yet to read something by Ursula K. Le Guin. So I thought, you know, I really want to read something by her. This poetry collection sounds interesting, and Rachel really loved it. So I thought, let me pick this up and see how I like it. Another book that I heard about on Booktube and therefore became very interested in is Finding Baba Yaga by Jane Yolen, and Maija at Maija Reads, who I will link below, talked about this. I thought it sounded absolutely wonderful. It is told in verse, and it is a story of a young girl finding her voice and empowerment through, I believe, meeting with Baba Yaga. And I love Baba Yaga stories. I mean, I love folk tales of all sorts, but I remember being a child and hearing Baba Yaga and her, you know, chicken-footed house, and just thinking that was such a cool thing. So I'm excited to read this story told in verse, a little bit different from poetry collections, so that should add some nice difference to my month. Next on my list is Life on Mars by Tracy K. Smith. This is a collection by a US poet laureate, which sounds really interesting. It has won a Pulitzer Prize, which sounds really interesting. And it is a sci-fi collection of poetry, which sounds very interesting. I think I might have also heard about this one from Rachel at Kalanadi, but I'm not positive at this point. Everything sort of blends together. But it just sounds like such a great collection to pick up. And I don't know that I've read any sci-fi poetry before, so I thought this will be a lot of fun. The next poetry collection on my list is maybe less fun, but probably incredibly meaningful. It's Whereas by Layli Long Soldier. Layli Long Soldier is a Lakota woman, and it seems like this poetry collection is her way of exploring her identity as somebody who lives in the US but is Lakota, somebody who is a woman but has a lot of other identities as well. It seems like it's going to be a very political collection, which I think makes a lot of sense if you're Lakota. There are definitely a lot of issues with being Indigenous in the US. So I thought this would be a great voice to hear this month and get some different poetry and different perspectives. Another collection that is likely to be really moving, but probably difficult, is Night Sky with Exit Wounds by Ocean Vuong. And this is something that I don't even know how I heard about it, but it is written by a gay Vietnamese refugee immigrant to the US who explores his identity, his family, his nationality, a lot of different issues in what sounds like a very powerful poetry collection. I've not read anything by Ocean Vuong and not heard of anybody else reading it, but it just sounds so interesting and I want to give it a try. Lastly, I was interested in adding some poetry from famous classical poets to my list, so I decided to add the poetry of Pablo Neruda by Pablo Neruda, who was a famous Chilean poet in the earlier part of the 20th century. So this collection, I believe, is a collection over the course of his entire life and features both some of the original Spanish poems as well as the translations in English. So I thought that would be nice as well to be able to compare side by side the original and the translation. We'll see how much I understand. Poetry is always challenging, even in your own language. So again, it's a little bit of a challenge for me this month, but we'll see how it goes and if I even get to this book because there's a lot of stuff on my list. So these are the books that I would like to prioritize in April for National Poetry Month. If anybody else is reading poetry for National Poetry Month or is doing another challenge for themselves or has a favorite poet that you would like to recommend, please go ahead and leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you.